Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, Pakistan's stated policy is to have peace, stability and progress across the region. But unfortunately, it's not preferred by most of its neighbors, including Afghanistan. Since more than 40 years, despite of so many sacrifices rendered for its immediate western neighbor, Pakistan is continuously facing terrorism, human, drug and narco smuggling, illegal migrants, criminals from Afghan soil. But it's unfortunate that Kabul, always promising to take decisive actions and then denying the same, joining hands with Pakistan's enemies and using blackmailing tactics. It means that Afghanistan playing double game with one of its honest neighbor who sacrifice most for its people, particularly the Afghan people. To discuss this important juncture and its important core issue, we have in our studios Hassan Khan, senior journalist. Thank you very much, Hassan, for being here in the studios. And we have fortunate to have online Dr. Waseem Ishauqe. He is the senior analyst joining us. Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem, for being online. My first question, Hassan, do you think that Pak-Afghan bilateral relations have the huge baggage of geopolitical factors, along with that historical grievances, and obviously the ethnic ties? So how do you see it?
Thank you very much, Faisal. I think it's a very important and very crucial question. It's a $1 million question to assess the reason behind Pakistan's, Afghanistan's, I think, strained relation. I will not use the word bad relation, but we remain in strained relations.
Yeah, definitely. Since, always a tug of war between both.
Since decades. And I think historically we see before Pakistan came into being, I think the region was a hotbed for struggle against the British imperialists across the Indus. And later on, when Pakistan came into being, we were expecting that now the situation will get normalized. But unfortunately, you know, they tried from the day first. It's not only the western neighbor. I think the eastern neighbors has played a pivotal role in creating further rifts between Pakistan and its western brotherly countries, Afghanistan. And there were certain issues which were blown out of context and blown out of proportion from the day first. And I think we didn't carry it out. However, post the communist era in Afghanistan, the PDPA government, because they were mostly hostile, then all toward Pakistan. In post PDPA, People Democratic Party of Afghanistan, the communist government, after that, Mujahideen took the reign of power in Afghanistan. And we were expecting that now Mujahideen spent a decade in Pakistan. Their families were here, were in Pakistan, and they enjoyed a good life and support to fight against the Russian inside Afghanistan. However, unfortunately, it's not something, what we call it, that the fault lies in the stars. Here the fault lies in the stars. It is quite unfortunate that after Taliban, you know, after the Mujahideen, then Taliban took over. You know, we were again expecting that now the situation will get normalized because we played a pivotal role in bringing Taliban to the seat. And after that, there was an era of democracy, which they call it the era of democracy in Afghanistan, Dr. Ashraf Ghani and President Karzai. And again, we were expecting that now the world is here and we are cooperating with the world, especially against war and terror. And it was almost a 2-decade conflict.
More than
2 decade conflict in Afghanistan. We were expecting, and now the situation will normalize. It's not only inside Afghanistan, but every time there is a conflict in Afghanistan, there is a huge influx of refugees from across the border to Pakistan. So Pakistan was having a sort of double problems. One, You have this law and order situations, as you mentioned in your intro, the narco trade, the weapon trades, etc., the human trade, etc. This is one problem, one part of the problem. And then we were also having this influx of refugees in hundreds of thousands. Still in Pakistan, we have almost 100,000, yani 5 million refugees still. If not refugees, the Afghans, national, I will use the word, they are still in Pakistan. So again, when Taliban took over, there were very good wishes from the Pakistani leadership that now definitely, because Taliban were here for 20 years in Pakistan.
Yeah, definitely, but they
Pakistan,
acted against the hope. And what we are
the problem was
about,
Pakistan lost the image at the cost of its image. Pakistan supported them. Other than the material and the human losses which Pakistan suffered, Pakistan is a huge image loss while supporting the Taliban.
It is unfortunate that world was at the one side and Pakistan was on the other side.
That's why I'm saying that we took the whole world just to have.
But it was embedded with sincerity.
Yeah, Pakistan
wants it. Sorry. And what's the reality? You have just mentioned about the eastern neighbor. What's the reality behind the ongoing regional tensions? That whether Afghanistan's non-cooperation, it's because of some sort of nefarious designs, or it's because of the double game which is going on in the region.
Look, Faisal, I think there's two sides of the story. One is that it's the Afghan government which has remained historically hostile toward Islamabad.
Yes.
Quite unfortunate.
Yes.
There are patches of good relations, but usually it remains hostile. And there is the people of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan always love Pakistan. There is nothing between the people of Pakistan and the people of Afghanistan.
Really nothing.
They speak the same language. They
right.
worship the same God. They follow the same prophet. They follow the same book, etc. Mean the same religion, the same faith, the same race, the same language, the same color, the same traditions and culture, etc. But you know, the problem, as I am studying this issue, I think there are other two countries which I think creating a sort of hostile ground in Afghanistan, and that is, one is specifically our eastern border, India. Whenever you see that there is a small problem between Pakistan and Afghanistan, I think they enter and they exploit not the people inside Afghanistan, but the diaspora, the Afghan diaspora, which is outside Afghanistan.
India is actually exploiting the situation, whatever it is. Yes.
And especially disinformation, wrong informations, and the feeding the people about like the issues of this the Pashtuns ethnicity, the people, the issue of the tribal districts, and the issue of this.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. India has the brigades of spreading the fake news and false news, and even using bad tactics to.
And unfortunately, the Afghans are being. I think they believed in the Indian this propaganda.
It's again unfortunate, really. But Dr. Waseem Ishauqe is waiting for us anxiously. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, why Afghanistan opted for apparently a double game when Kabul requires Pakistan's as well as international community support to have recognition?
Faisal, let me begin by saying that Pakistan is one such country which has sacrificed the most for peace and stability in Afghanistan, and in consequence, Pakistan has suffered the most. Pakistan has always tried its best at all levels, diplomatic means, the military means, so that the peace should return to Afghanistan, and the Afghan refugees, which are about 4 million documented and maybe almost 2 million which are undocumented, should have the right and honor to return back to their country and start living an honorable life. But we have seen since last 4 decades, unfortunately, despite that we have seen the Mujahideen fighting with the Soviets, our Mujahideen or government replaced by Taliban first government, then war on terrorism, and then Taliban second government. Unfortunately, the Taliban lack capacity to govern their own country. This is what has been evident as we see in last 2 years. So therefore, they are vulnerable to be their foreign policy is vulnerable to be hijacked by some other third power. And that in our case is very much visible. India has had a long influence even before Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and that has been maintained by some degree, barring, let's say, a bit of time of Mujahideen. But India has been a great influential factor in Pak-Afghan relations and also in the governance of Afghanistan. So therefore, whenever India found the space, India has exploited to a great extent. Now, since last 2 years, we have seen that Afghan Taliban, the promises which they made as a result of Doha Agreement, two are very prominent: inclusive government, and second, not allowing Afghan territory to be used for terrorism, cross-border terrorism against its neighbor and especially against Pakistan. But unfortunately, Afghan Taliban have failed on both of these accounts, and India was already ready to exploit this. And if you just have a look on 2 decades of war on terrorism, the neighboring regions on Pak-Afghan border, like the Kunnar, Paktia, Paktika, Nuristan, Jalalabad, these were actually hotbed for Indian RAW for exploitation and operations inside Pakistan. Those have somehow now been turned into an
Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about on these aspects, particularly regarding terrorism and all that, Pakistan and the whole region is always asking Afghanistan to take decisive actions against all those terrorist outfits took refuge at the Afghan soil, root out the safe havens, along with dismantle all networks and disarm particularly, and not end the arms supply and cut finances to those who are utilizing it to inflict terrorism upon the neighboring countries, particularly Pakistan. So why nothing happened yet?
Biggest disappointment out of last 2 years, if we just can have a look on, especially from the security and governance aspects, the Afghan Taliban's writ of the government is only limited to 3 urban areas: Jalalabad, Kabul, and Kandahar. And beyond that are actually ungoverned spaces. And especially those 5 areas which I just highlighted, they are now hotbeds of terrorists because they are their hideouts, and especially TTP and BLA activists are hiding over there. And since they have active support of India and the lack of capacity and lack of political will by the Afghan government, so therefore those areas are being exploited. And as per my research, there are more than 5,000 active TTP members hiding into those areas, and which are sporadically launching attacks against Pakistan and then running out from here and into their safe havens. So while Pakistan in the last 1 year, only 2023, participated in 3 high-level multilateral forums, for example, the Samarkand Quadrilateral Conference, then Islamabad Trilateral Conference, and Kazan Conference. All the communique of all these conferences highlighted and demanded only one thing from Afghanistan: please control the ungoverned spaces and control the terrorism, which is actually has expanded to a large degree in last 2 years. While on the internal front, they have been able to bring a bit of stability, while on the external front, the terrorism attacks on the neighboring countries and especially on Pakistan, more than 300 just last year.
Right. Absolutely right. You are well elaborated. Hassan, when we are talking about Afghanistan particularly, they always claimed that they have took decisive actions against the terrorists, and they even captured some of them. Then why, when Pakistan demanded to hand over all those TTP elements, particularly to Pakistan, and they are reluctant to do that, why it is happening?
I think, Faisal, this issue of terrorism, it is not specific to Afghanistan or specific to Pakistan. I think this is a regional issue, and it needs a regional approach definitely to handle it. Pakistan's, unfortunately, we are engaged in this war on terror since last, I think since 2002 or 2004.
Obviously.
This issue is going on. Now, I think the measure Pakistan has taken, as Brigadier Saab said it, decisive actions vis-a-vis it is concerned the policy or it's the kinetic operations going against the terrorists inside their hideouts across the mountain valleys, etc., wherever they were. So Pakistan security forces conducted scores of military operations, and we lost I think precious lives.
Obviously, we rendered lots of sacrifices, really, very valuable lives.
Whether it was the officers, whether it was the Jawans, or it was the ordinary people, particularly the police.
Even the law enforcement agencies, even our intelligence agencies,
and
all of them
at the cost of that, we, I think, almost flushed them out and cleaned the Pakistani territory, which is under the control of Pakistan's government. But unfortunately, Afghanistan's remain a trouble zone, a bad area, a dirty area for especially the terrorists or those unwanted elements, whether they were from Pakistan or from the other line. Look at the Daesh, or look at the Al Qaeda, etc. Look at the ETIM. Look at the
definitely Tajiks, Uzbeks, Arabs, most of the other people.
Most of the militants or the terrorist networks which are operating against other countries in the region and abroad, they have houses and they are stations in Afghanistan. But one thing which is, I think, a matter of concerns for people like us is that since taking over power in Afghanistan after Doha Agreement, Taliban has successfully, I think, thwarted or stopped Al Qaeda from any operations outside Afghanistan. Let's say in their the area which Al Qaeda want to target, especially the Europe or the US or the developed countries. So since last 2 years, Al Qaeda is I think it's dormant. It has conducted no operation. So it is good that Taliban have.
But some says that Al Qaeda merged into other factions as at least more than 23 banned terrorist outfits are residing there.
That's what I am now saying you. But Al Qaeda, instead of being directly involved in operation, now it is supporting it is nourishing other terrorist groups like the TTP, it is supporting the ETIM, the Uzbekistan Islamic Movement. But another important thing is that, look, as for the ETIM, they have succeeded, then China is secured. But unfortunately, Taliban failed to take decisive actions against the TTP. And since last 2 years, I think TTP has inflicted huge losses, human and material losses on Pakistan. And I think Taliban should, I think, now realize the gravity of the situation, that the people of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan is no more in a position to digest it any further.
Definitely, it is impossible to tolerate, really.
Yeah.
Yes, your point well taken. But when an enemy like India has some sort of aggression or nefarious designs against Pakistan, it's quite understandable. But why Afghanistan is following that path?
I think, as I said, there is a historical perspective also, and there is this current, especially Pakistan being involved in various phases of Afghan war, whether it was in the early 80s, whether it was in the 90s, or whether it was in the 21st, during this last 20 years. So I think, unfortunately, Afghans faced a lot of troubles, deaths, destructions, etc. So now they are very much perceptible to the propaganda. They are unable, they are not able, I think, to analyze this world politics, and especially where they are hostile country like Pakistan, India. And also, I think, to an extent, Iran is also not happy for Afghanistan to have good relations with Pakistan. The reason is, once Pakistan and Afghanistan have normalized their relations and the business and trade activities are open, so I think the rest of the countries, especially whether it is Iran, whether it is India, whether it is the other Central Asian countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan have the closest market to each other.
Definitely,
and I think the most, I think the workable, where the Afghans feel at home when they are in Pakistan, where Pakistanis businessmen feel at home when they are in Afghanistan. So unfortunately, and then Afghanistan is the shortest, easiest route for Pakistan for the Central Asian market, and for Central Asia to connect with the world. Gwadar port, Karachi port, or the Pakistani ports are the easiest, the nearest spots to get access to. But unfortunately, these countries, especially India, will never want. India's policy is to sandwich Pakistan from east and from west, and they are quite, to an extent, I will say, they are successful in. But Faisal, there is another aspect to this issues also, and that is kuch sano di maran da shauq is sahi.
Oh, yeah.
Pakistan's, unfortunately, it's Pakistan's policy over the period of time. We haven't focused on Pakistan's interest, the national interest. Somehow, I think the individual who were behind the Afghan policies was never brought into the parliament. It was never discussed in the public domains, etc. And it was quite a confused thing. So that what are our targets in Afghanistan? Now, for the first time, I think I'm looking and I'm observing that Pakistan is now trying to articulate an Afghan policy which is acceptable across the board in Pakistan, and which is, I think, definitely, I expect that this time it will be also taken to the parliament, it will be discussed in the public domain. So we have a permanent, coherent, long-lasting policy where to protect the vital interest of Pakistan.
And definitely it must have to be long-lasting policy. We have to carve such policies in favor of Pakistan particularly, and also must have to be clear
because
in
a
a sense
peaceful
that we
Afghanistan,
want to engage
there is
Kabul
no
on
doubt
that
in it. A peaceful Afghanistan, a prosperous Afghanistan, a stable Afghanistan is in the interest of Pakistan. I think that will ensure. I will definitely borrow words from former Afghan President, President Hamid Karzai, who said that Pakistan and Afghanistan are conjoined twins. So they can't be separated, and if you separate them, both will die.
Definitely,
so
when
so closer the relation is.
It's obvious that we can't change neighbors, and if we have neighbor like a
like
brotherly neighbor, then we have to look into it. Thank you very much, Hassan Khan, for being here in the studios, and very candid views you have expressed. Thank you very much for that. Dr. Waseem, when we are talking about Afghanistan commitments with Pakistan and China, you obviously remember that there were a trilateral Pakistan, China and Afghanistan earlier, where Afghanistan ensured that its soil will never be used against both the countries, and it will take decisive actions against all those terrorist outfits who are actually inflicting pain, terrorism, and especially on Pakistan, Pakistani security forces, its innocent people. But Kabul keep on denying then afterwards that there was no TTP, there were no ETIM, East Turkestan Islamic Movement, or any other terrorist outfit residing or hiding in Afghanistan at the Afghan soil.
Faisal, let me highlight a few more points before directly coming up to this answer. Pakistan, in fact, had followed very ambitious Afghanistan policy. Actually, we were always in a hurry to stabilize our western border. Whatever we followed during the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and thereafter the Mujahideen governments and the Taliban governments, and the 20 years of war on terrorism, our biggest concern was that stability should return to Afghanistan and Afghan people should be able to govern their own country. And the peace in Afghanistan would eventually ensure peace in Pakistan. This has been Pakistan's stated policy. And in last about 50 years, Pakistan has followed the same policy. Of course, the manifestation could have been different because the geostrategic environments have been very different. But also, please keep in mind that the geostrategic environment since 1979 until today were not of Pakistan's making. It was all the great power politics and great power competition which were resulting inside Afghanistan and manifested inside Afghanistan. And Pakistan was always the sufferer of as a consequence of those great power competitions. So in that consequence, Pakistan suffered materially, Pakistan suffered financially, and just in last 20 years of war on terrorism, Pakistan has suffered financial loss of over 150 billion US dollar, and 90,000 innocent Pakistanis have lost their lives just for the cause of stability and peace in Afghanistan. This is a great sacrifice. No other country has ever paid for this. Now coming over to the foreign policy of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Unfortunately, Afghanistan does not have a governance structure and governance system since last 40 years. So what is happening? They have a stopgap arrangements. Even the previous so-called two democratically elected governments during the era of war on terrorism, 2 to 3 governments, they were again not very representative governments. They were just confined to Kabul and maybe slightly more urban areas. And even the current Afghan government is also not very inclusive government. So this is the biggest challenge. Then the statecraft and governance a country requires a lot of pragmatism. Unfortunately, that is also missing. So from Pakistan's side, if you have a look on the Pakistan-Afghan relations and Pakistan's compulsion to stabilize this region, I think we have done a lot in every domain. Still, as per the government data and the UN data, around 3 million Afghan nationals or maybe Afghan refugees are still residing in Afghanistan.
On that note particularly, why Kabul is so disturbed? Why hue and cry when the illegal foreigners, particularly Afghan nationals, are deported from Pakistan? Pakistan put curbs on smuggling, including the dollar smuggling, arms smuggling, illegal trade, mandatory visas for all, and tighten the border control. So why there is hue and cry in Kabul?
See, when the Doha agreement defined that it should have an inclusive government, and the Afghan people should have the right to select their own government and let that government should govern Afghanistan. Unfortunately, they failed on this account. So since the government is not actually inclusive, so it can't represent the entire Afghan population. It has not been able to deliver on any promise in the last 2 years. So therefore, for face saving, the only scapegoat available to that government for showing any sort of performance is the Pakistan bashing. So this has been the policy of even the previous Afghan governments. Unfortunately, this government does not have even the political will to control those ungoverned spaces. And as a result, they are using TTP as a leverage for foreign policy tools of coercive foreign policy against Pakistan. This is the stated fact, and this a lot of research, both national and international research, has verified which I have just highlighted. So it is just a leverage tool of foreign policy. The terrorism is being used purposely by the incumbent Afghan government for furthering its all foreign policy objectives against Pakistan. And such a space has also been exploited by our eastern neighbor. So there are strong nexus between the terrorist organizations which are operating inside Afghanistan, the current Afghan government, as well as the Indian intelligence agencies. So if we then analyze these three nexus, the current situation which we are facing, especially after the takeover of Taliban's inside Kabul, the security situation in Pakistan's KPK area and Balochistan.
Dr. Waseem, well elaborated. Viewers, here we welcome our next guest, Saira Ijaz. She is the senior analyst. Most welcome to you, Saira, for being here in the studios. When we are talking about the Doha Agreement, do you not think that Kabul breached that agreement and not adhere to the promises which were actually taken by Kabul? And unfortunately, that not only that agreement but all the promises breached what the regional countries and with Pakistan as well. So how do you see those commitments not fulfilled by Kabul?
There is no doubt, excuse me, there is no doubt about it that current Taliban regime, which has been, which came into the power after that agreement. It's, by the way, it's not the direct or military victory by the Talibans over the US, but it was, they came into power after that, that Doha agreement. And they have clearly violated all those points and agreed between them and the superpower. But again, every violation has its own pitfalls, has its own results, and you will see, as we see that after the fall of Kabul, and after that Doha agreement, the main expectations from the current Taliban regime were main two expectations which the entire world and which the US was expecting and its regional countries and neighboring countries were expecting were, number one, that they should have create an inclusive government and by protecting human and women rights, which they have been.
They are denying. They keep on denying that.
They keep on denying, and they are not. It is very clear that they are not able to do that.
Then the most important was an inclusive government over there, and along with that, their soil must not be used against its neighbors
yes.
and to the region and for the for globe.
Yes, and the second expectation and the second thing was that their soil was not used for transnational terrorism. Again, over the 2 years, and Pakistan being the worst victim of that terrorism is the open secret to that, and is an
So why Kabul is most interested in erupting tensions rather than cooperation? Because Pakistan is always stressing to have cooperation and to have for the mutual benefits, particularly not only for bilaterals but also for the region. But why Kabul is on other track?
There could be two more reasons. There could be two reasons for that. Number one, the religious ideological mindset of the current regime, one thing, we cannot deny it. And number two, the old and it's very hard to leave your partners all of a sudden. The Afghan, be it ISKP or be it Al-Qaeda, be it TTP, they all were together, and they were friends, and they were like brothers to each other and helpers to each other against so-called the US invasion of Afghanistan. So I think it's from that that perspective, it's difficult for Taliban's as well to, cut ties altogether. But again, it's their first and foremost challenge and expectation, and they have to do it. Otherwise, you will see that we are talking about in the regional perspective, because we all are, prisoners to geography. We cannot deny, we cannot, abandon our neighbor. But peace and stability in Afghanistan is not a regional issue, it's a global issue. And if the current Taliban regime is still does not cater to this issue of transnational terrorism and supporting all those and providing havens and safe sanctuaries to all those terrorist organizations, the world will have serious concerns. And nothing is permanent in the world of IR.
Getting your point, Dr. Waseem, do you think that the Indo-Afghan nexus, as you have rightly pointed out, is still exists, and even it is getting robust by using terrorism against Pakistan, particularly using Afghan refugees for their agenda and igniting the water conflicts between Afghanistan and Pakistan? Do you think so, that India is working on that and this nexus is already there in Kabul?
I have absolutely no doubt. Just see the events of last 1 year. More than 300 suicide attacks or terrorist attacks inside Pakistan, and majority of those were Afghan nationals. That way, it is absolutely clear that other than the TTP, they have the Afghans who are inside Pakistan using them as their agents. And those have been financed and supported and given the military equipment and hardware by the Indian intelligence agencies, Raza. So not only at the, I would say, the intelligence level, there is a cooperation even at the diplomatic level. There has been an increased engagement between Taliban and India India has already had about $2 billion investment inside Afghanistan during the previous Karzai government and the Ashraf Ghani's government. So India has demonstrated a lot of soft power in terms of building the parliament building and also the hospitals, schools, and also the main national highway, the Dalram highway. So in that case, India has a lot of acceptance and a lot of say in the affairs in Afghanistan, even during Taliban regime. So those nexus have been becoming robust since last 2 years. We barring few initial 6 to 8 months initially when they were just trying to settle down, but thereafter there are strong nexus between these two.
Dr. Waseem, there are some independent reports which suggest that Afghanistan, with some of the assistance from our eastern neighbor, is also involved in different political campaigns, along with the dangerous polarization which is emerging in Pakistan. India, Delhi and Kabul both are having some sort of hand in it, and they are getting benefits out of that.
I have absolutely no doubt that India is trying to create a sort of security dilemma for Pakistan by creating a security situation inside KPK and inside Balochistan. And we have seen that TTP claiming responsibility for terrorist attacks inside KPK, BLA claiming a lot of terrorist attacks inside Balochistan. So I feel that there are strong nexus between TTP and BLA and TTP, BLA and Afghan Taliban. So these nexus have been established, and see the events of last 2 years. I think probably there is absolutely no doubt. And the situation is being exploited by India because it actually strengthens and it helps in leveraging these terrorist organizations for creating a security situation inside Pakistan.
So if you, Dr. Waseem, if you briefly tell us about the latest statement of the Deputy Foreign Minister of Afghanistan, Sher Mohammad Abbas Tanikzai, in which he has lambarded against the borders and all other things, and they are keep on denying the international border and all that, and they are speaking the language of Indians right now.
Exactly. This is what I highlighted. Unfortunately, let me say that they have been, now they have started saying that this Pakistan-Afghanistan border does not exist. And this is the old claim of, let's say, since partition of Pakistan since 1947. So they have denied even the acceptable
partition of subcontinent and making of Pakistan.
Yes. So international accepted border between Pakistan and Afghanistan since the British Empire times. So this is the language which India has been actually feeding them, and the previous Afghan government have also said like this, and exactly the same has been copied by the current Afghan government. So I have absolutely no doubt that this language has been fed by the Indian intelligence agencies and the Indian diplomats. However, but we don't have to lose hope. The situation which now appears that Pakistan armed forces are absolutely determined not to allow any space inside Pakistan for any terrorist activity. And we have seen that as a result of National Action Plan, we rooted out the terrorism.
Dr. Waseem, your point well taken. Saira, when we are talking about engaging in the diplomatic way, do you really think that with double standards and having double game in mind, one state can engage other in an effective diplomacy?
There is no doubt, and it's a big challenge, big strategic and diplomatic challenge for Pakistan, but we don't have any other choice. As I mentioned earlier, we all are prisoners of geography. We cannot abandon and we cannot leave Afghanistan on its own. We have to engage with it at all costs. So, but it's a conundrum sort of condition, because if there is stability or there is civil war in Afghanistan, the biggest victim has been Pakistan and will be Pakistan. So we have no other option.
Definitely we can't go in isolation. Even we are paying huge cost of engaging Afghanistan as well.
Yes, and we have to engage, and we have to have certain diplomatic and security strategies. As recently we have banned, and we have very thoroughly and very strategically and mindfully decided to send back all the illegal
Our charged affair in Afghanistan, he was attacked. Our security forces at the border, the checkposts are keep on attacking by the terrorists. Our innocent civilians, they are suffering the brunt of this terrorism and all that, and instability what Pakistan is facing at the hands of Afghanistan. And that's why one of the factor why the economy is suffering.
And Pakistan, and the very sad thing is that after 2021 and with this new regime in Afghanistan, Pakistan has sported be it in terms of trade, transit trade, coordinated border management and cross-border trade and cross-border management. I don't know why they can't see all these things, why they can't understand the importance of a neighboring country, and especially those countries where their 4 million Afghanis and their own nationals are being fed here, are being living here for decades now. But
despite of the all economic woes Pakistan has
I would also
already.
like to, in addition to it, that there is a history of Indian involvement. India has been making strategic space in Afghanistan and capital in Kabul, and there is a history to it. As late Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, also during the times of post-Cold War and the Russia-Afghanistan war, 79 to 80, he mentioned to his counterpart, Russian Prime Minister, that they don't want Afghanistan to fall in the hands of Pakistan, because it's really not in the strategic interest. It's written, it's there in the hands of.
So how do you analyze any difference between Karzai, Ghani government and the Afghan Taliban Authority? Is there any difference between them or nothing else?
There is much difference. I think there is difference, because at that time India was not that much welcomed, or that was at bay due to certain strategic aspects and due to certain strategic issues. But right now with this current regime, the way India has is being involved there, is investing there. There is no budget in the Indian for this Afghanistan in their whole budget, but they separated huge amount for development projects in Afghanistan, be it in the form of dams or in the other infrastructural development, schools.
But still the Afghan Taliban are different than the Karzai and Ghani regimes.
I think they are, and they are in a, they are also in trouble, no? Because they need to have legitimacy.
Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, do you foresee any sort of a difference between Afghan Taliban, Ghani government and then the Karzai government? Any difference or nothing?
I think the current government is far more unpopular in a way that they did not come up to the fulfilling of those promises which they made during the Doha Agreement. The previous governments of Hamid Karzai and Ashraf Ghani, they had a full backing of international community. and the security was being provided by the NATO and all the allied forces. So therefore, in that account, they had a higher edge, and far more rate of the government was all around as compared to this Taliban government. So Taliban government.
What about Pakistan, towards Pakistan? Is there any difference between all three?
There is hardly any difference because all of them had adopted the similar posturing against Pakistan. While Pakistan always tried for stability inside Afghanistan, unfortunately, all these governments did not have a positive influence and positive attitude towards Pakistan. But especially, let me also highlight that the end state, what Pakistan's foreign policy does not look at having a sort of very conflictual relations go on for indefinite period of time. There are certain leverages which Pakistan government can exploit, and one, the biggest leverage is Afghan transit trade. The theory of interdependence of international relations highlight that since the entire Afghanistan is trade is dependent on Pakistan, so therefore Pakistan can utilize this as a positive tool of foreign policy for having a positive impact on Pak-Afghan relations.
Dr. Waseem, your point well taken. Saira, what would be the ultimate future of an effective, reliable, cooperative and trustworthy Pak-Afghan relations in future?
I would like to highlight here the geographical importance and the geographical location of Afghanistan, the immense treasure it has in the form of natural resources. But alas, for the last 40 years, maybe more, there is no stability in that region. If Afghanistan could realize its importance, its geographical importance, its regional importance, its global importance with the right circumstances, that country could be I am telling you, could be a regional roundabout.
So do you think that there is an ample realization within Kabul and to the Afghan Taliban authorities?
I think that's the dilemma, and I think that's the dilemma that they don't have. They don't have the realization of their importance, the peace and stability, the ways out, the strategies. They are not moving in the right direction. That's the problem. They are engaging with India, which is not directly its neighbor, and they are not engaging with their immediate neighbor, and who has always facilitated them. And just imagine, at the larger scenario, if you don't realize the importance of the right thing at the right time, you will suffer. Anybody will suffer, and such is the case with the states. And India is directly, and again, the very worrisome thing is that the support of Afghan regime of Chabahar port in Iran, which is not in favor of Pakistan, and rather CPEC, TAPI, all these regional projects has a huge potential, and it can benefit.
Definitely, Pakistan always be the ambassador to for CPEC extension towards Afghanistan as well. So Afghanistan is not responding on these things.
And that's the dilemma.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, do you think that there is a ample will and urge among the Afghan Taliban to just recognize and realize what is happening in the region and how they have to behave responsibly?
I think the current Taliban government probably has not been able to come up to the expectations of the regional countries as well as the international community. However, there is a great realization on Pakistan's part that we need to engage the current Afghan government at several levels. And Pakistan has been using its leverages in the past, and Pakistan is using its leverages even now. However, the biggest good thing which is happening in the near past has been that there has been an exchange of ambassadors between China and Afghanistan. China has also, the mining companies of China have invested previously also, and they are now interested for a huge investment inside Afghanistan, which has already been agreed by the Taliban government. China has also convinced the Taliban government for extension of CPEC, which they have also agreed. So China is actually now a stabilizing factor between Pakistan and Afghanistan's relationship. And China helped in the past at the multilateral forum as well as the bilateral forum to really bring Pakistan and Afghanistan closer to each other. So therefore, China is trying its best. Pakistan is also trying its best. There is a bit of realization now in the Afghan government that the previous policies, they cannot go on for indefinite period of time. So therefore, they have to mend their ways, and they have to come up with a new strategy of engaging Pakistan and having a stable relations, rooting out terrorism, and then trying to get the benefits and enjoy the benefits of economic development, which is now right in the corner.
Absolutely right. You are absolutely right, Dr. Waseem. How much an economically, socially, defense-wise strong Pakistan is inevitable in the face of all the challenges and particularly the troublesome neighbors like Afghanistan?
If we just see the era which we are passing right now, while there are many geopolitical and geostrategic imperatives, but both Pakistan and Afghanistan together today are actually sitting at the opportunity corridors. CPAC is the north-south connectivity. TAPI and CASA 1000 is actually east-west connectivity. Then Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline has also been initiated, another very positive development. Extension of CPAC towards Afghanistan, towards Iran, and then towards Gulf and wider Middle East, promising a lot of good economic future for all these countries. And Gwadar port, when it is completed, and CPAC, when it is completed in just in about 5 to 7 years' time, I'm sure the benefits of this economic development would be realized by Pakistan, by Afghanistan, by the Gulf countries, and this entire region would actually turn into a economic miracle just in a matter of 5 to 7 years, provided we just keep focus and try to stabilize the region. So that is the biggest concern.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem, for being with us online and for your candid views overall. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Saira, for being here in the studios, and you have elaborated things well. Thank you. So nice of you. Viewers, as you have just listened to our panelists, and even the international community is keep on stressing that there are ample opportunities for the region to grow when it is inclusively. To all countries on board, particularly Pakistan and Afghanistan. But Afghanistan has to think of, first of all, their own potential to grow, to stabilize their country, to have peace and economically viable. And then, of course, Pakistan and Afghanistan both have to go together. But for that matter, it is important that Afghanistan must have to go away from the ill-conceived policies and root out terrorism from its soil, vanish all those terrorist outfits who have took refuge or taken refuge at the Afghan soil, and give a sigh of relief to the Afghan people through their social protection and economic well-being. But this is up to Afghanistan, and the current regime has to do something on that. This is today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.